All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the MHP Show podcast. I'm your host, Derek Vickers. On the MHP Show, we were talking about mobile home parks, real estate, mobile home park operations, anything that has to do with building wealth, really, in real estate and specifically mobile home parks. And, before we get started, I wanted to remind you guys that if you go to victorycapital.com, we have our Fund One going right now, which is about halfway done. We already have 6 assets in the fund. So look, if you love the asset class of mobile home parks and you're interested in putting some capital to work, especially before the end of the year, because we still have 100% bonus depreciation this year, go to victorycapital.com and go to offerings and you can check out Fund One. So go check that out. But guys, I have a very special guest with me today. This guy, if you're in real estate and don't know who he is, I don't know. You must be living under a rock or something, but I've got Mr. Rod Khleif here with me today. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, brother. Yeah, he's a legend in his own mind. Rod Khleif, that is. Yeah. Anyway, let's have some fun today, buddy. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've watched some of your stuff, and you and I have kind of a similar start in that I started in insurance sales, and I think you started as a real estate broker. But I
Yeah.
want you to talk about that and where you came from, because I didn't make shit my first year when I did insurance, probably about 13 grand, and I think you kind of had the same experience. So let's start there and tell me about
All
that.
right. Yeah. So I'm a Dutch immigrant. I was born in the Netherlands, think wooden shoes and windmills, and immigrated when I was 6 to this country. Got naturalized when I'm legal. Got naturalized when I was 17. That's a hot topic right now. But anyway, I ended up in Denver, Colorado. We didn't have much, Derek. I mean, I grew up. We shopped at an expired food store. True story. Bought food from an expired food store. Drank powdered milk with our cereal in the morning because it was cheaper than real milk. And trust me, it sounds better than it is. And I wore hand-me-down clothes from the Goodwill and the Salvation Army literally all the way through junior high school until I lied about my age at Burger King when I was 15 because I was tall. And actually, I was 14 rather, and got a job flipping burgers so I could buy my own freaking clothes and ultimately buy a car when I turned 15, which I did. And I know, you've got listeners had it harder than I did, maybe have it harder now with all this freaking craziness going on. But I knew I wanted more. And luckily, my mom had an incredible work ethic. So she babysat kids so we'd have enough money to eat. And with her babysitting money, she was a bit of an entrepreneur. And she invested in the stock market successfully and also invested in real estate. Well, her first real estate acquisition was the house right across the street from us. She bought when I was, 14 for about 30 grand. Then when I was 17, she told me she'd made $20,000 in her sleep. I'm like, what? And this was when 20 grand was a lot of money. We're talking 1977. And
Oh, wow.
I'm like, you made 20 grand and you didn't do anything? Screw college. I'm getting into real estate. So I went out and got my real estate broker's license right when I turned 18, which you could do back then with education. They got smart. Now you need some freaking experience before you can run your own office. And I was smart enough to go work for somebody else. In fact, that ties into what I'm going to say next. But my first year I made about 8 grand. My second year, maybe 10 grand. But my third year I made over $100,000, which back in 1980 was some real money. And so what happened between year 2 and year 3 to cause me to 10x my income? Well, what happened was this broker I was working for taught me about the importance of mindset and psychology. How really 80 to 90% of your success in anything is that. It's not the real estate stuff we talk about on our podcast. It's the do and it's the keep doing. And so fast forward to today, I've owned over 2,000 houses that I've rented long term. I own thousands of apartment units now. In 2006, my net worth went up $17 million while I slept. And you might say, wow. I said, wow, I got a head so big, I could barely fit it through a door. I thought I was a real estate god. And when that happens, God will give you a nice little smackdown.
Of course.
That was 2008. I lost $50 million conservatively in 2008 and 9. And so what I'm known for talking about on my podcast, and I'm blessed to host the largest commercial real estate podcast really in the world now. What I'm known for talking, that sounded so egotistical. Forgive me for that, but it is, but it still sounded egotistical. What I'm known for talking about on that show, and I think the reason it's so successful is mindset and psychology. People don't remember what you said, but they remember how you made them feel. And, I do clips every week on mindset and they're really well received. And at my boot camps, I talk about it as well. And as I was telling you, Derek, before we started recording, I think that's why my students are so successful, because they actually do it. They take action. So, you know, yeah, it's a topic I enjoy talking about, you know, and I will tell you some of the strategies that I used to recover from losing everything in 2008 and 9 are the same ones someone would need to use to get started. Um, so happy to drill down on those a little bit if you like, or we can just talk real estate.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm curious at like what you see like I talk to people all the time because we don't really do coaching anymore. Like we're doing
Mhm.
so many deals and things right now. Like
Mhm.
we just don't really have time for it. But
Right.
guys still reach out to me for it, right? And
Mhm.
they're like, well, I tried this program and did this program and I'm not doing anything. Like, what do you do to
Not
get
my
through?
program. Not my
That's what I'm
program.
saying. Like, what do you do
If
to
you heard
get
that
through?
about mine, I want their number because my I was telling you before we started recording. My warrior coaching program. I've been teaching a little over 8 years, and we're counting right now. And the count is, I think, about 280,000 multifamily units. We know it's a lot more than that because we lose touch with people and whatnot. So I
Mm,
think it's closer to 300,000 multifamily units that they own under my tutelage. Something I'm incredibly proud of. There are tons of senior housing, tons of mobile home parks. You said yourself you're buying a mobile home park from one of my students. I think you
yeah,
said,
yeah.
self storage, hotel conversions, industrial flex space. You name it, every asset class. It's got kind of gotten a life of its own, but it's successful, I'm certain, because they actually go do it. I'm kicking them in the ass, go make it happen, go, helping them get aligned on their goals, helping them create their identity so that it pulls them into what they're looking for. And it's just, like I said, I get goosebumps thinking about how incredibly successful the program has been. I mean, I know that my coaching program exceeds it. I'm 99% certain it exceeds all the other ones combined. And it's a fraction of the cost too. But anyway, yeah,
But why is that, Rod? Why is that? Why is it that the guys are so much more successful in your program?
I mean, first of all, we did an analysis of the deals very recently, actually, because we had a warrior event in Phoenix where we get them together. We discovered, I don't know, probably 5 years ago, that our most successful warriors by far were the ones that were the most connected in the group. So we started strategizing ways to connect them. And I never did actual warrior events before. We started doing that. We do some other things to connect them. And we discovered when we did an analysis of the deals that they submitted, which they don't submit all their deals. They get a cool sword when they do. They can become a warrior of the sword. They get this really cool sword when they submit a deal. But out of the ones they submitted, 98% of them were done between warriors. So I think that's one of the biggest successes. It's the actual ecosystem. It's not listening to me drone on about what to do and where to do it. It's more the fact they get together and they make this shit happen. And this business is a team sport, Derek. I'm sure you have a team.
Oh yeah.
You don't do this on your own. And you can buy houses on your own. I pretty much bought 2,000 houses mostly by myself. My brothers were involved, and I had some employees and stuff. But you're not doing commercial real estate on your own. And I think that's the biggest piece is the ecosystem, the environment. And there's so much support. There's so much validation. I mean, we have a deal close almost every single day in our Facebook group, and they're getting praised and they're getting congratulated. And it just it's this rising tide lifts all ships mentality, I really think, is what's happening. And like I said, it's pretty extraordinary. I'm very, very proud of the success that they have. I got a wall in my office. I'm in my Miami home, but in my Sarasota compound where I have my video studio, I have a wall in an office there covered with hundreds of thank you cards, from my students. But anyway, yeah. So that's why.
Yeah.
That was a
No,
long
that's
answer.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And then
So
you
by the
talked
way,
about
if you're listening and you want to apply to my warrior program, go to my link tree, text the word links to 72345 because there's a bunch of free stuff there that'll really help you. There's my boot camp website, and you can come to one of my virtual boot camps for $47, and I don't sell anything, so it's kind of a no-brainer. 2 days of training, nothing being sold. But that's it. If you text links to 72345 or go to rodslinks.com, that's there. I've got a goal-setting workshop at the bottom. I'd love to talk a little bit about mindset, but the first thing is you got to know what you want and why you want it. So you push through fear, you push through limiting beliefs, you make things happen. And I've got my goal setting workshop there. It's free. I'm not going to try to sell you anything. There's a guide you can download. It's there at Rod's Links. And then, tons of free books about commercial real estate, and they're best in class books. They're not a bunch of crap. I mean, these are really good books. There's a bunch of them there on, how to pick a partner, how to hire a third party property management company, syndication, financing, asset management. I mean, these are really quality products and they're free. So, So anyway, yeah, that's at Rod's links. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to ask you too, because we're talking, you talk about mindset, and I'm like huge on that. And then like I know when I talk about it and people like, ask me like, I don't have a deal yet, what's my deal? And I'm like, well, how are you thinking? Like what is your mindset like? And people roll their eyes like, oh, another mindset stuff. And I'm like, dude, you just negative, man. Like you've got the wrong mindset because you're looking at it that way.
Well,
like,
listen,
what's the foundation?
I made 50 million. I lost it and I got it back. So I know it works, and I know the strategies to make it work, and ignore them at your peril is all I'll tell you. I mean,
Exactly.
if that's the bottom line, because they freaking work. It's around manifestation, and again, it starts with goals. You got to figure out what you want and why you want it, because you got to create that burning desire, that hunger to actually go kick ass and make it happen. And once you've done your goals, see, here's the problem, Derek. People spend more time planning a freaking Christmas party than they do designing their lives. Doing your goals is designing your life. So, even if you're not interested in what I teach, go to Rod's links, do the goal setting workshop, have your spouse do it, have your child, if they're over 10 years old, do it, and design their freaking lives. You'll leave so motivated, you'll be coming out of your skin. It's only an hour. Give me an hour. Trust me, you'll thank me. So it starts with that. And then you got to make a decision. When I lost everything, I reassociated with my goals, which is the first thing I did. After I got up underneath from the rock I was hiding under, because I lost everything, but I reassociated with my goals. Then I made a decision, and that's the next piece. You got to make a decision, and sometimes, and I don't mean dip your toe in the water. I don't mean 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I mean it's freaking done. Okay, I'm gonna get off my ass. I'm gonna go make something happen. That's a decision, and you decide. The Latin root for the word decision means to cut off. If you're going to attack the island, you burn your ships because you're taking their ships home. Okay, that's a decision. Yep. You're in. And then once you've done that, you're like a train on a track. Motivation will get you started, but that commitment is in that decision after that commitment after that decision is what gets you home. So that's what I did. I decided, okay, enough. I'm going to get back together. I built another company. It turned out to be a $10 million litigation support company out of the ashes out of all that. This is when I lost everything. But it's the same stuff you do to get started, and then you got to take that first step. And, that first step is very scary for a lot of people, especially if you're analytical. And if you're listening and you're analytical, I love you. And you're some of the most successful people in our business. Would you agree with that, Derek?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this business requires analytics, and so, but I know, but you also know, if you're analytical, that you literally need to check off every freaking box before you make a move, and you can't do that. Okay, like Dr. Martin Luther King said, you take that first step in faith, the next step will be revealed, and that's the mindset you have to have, especially if you're analytical and detail oriented, and that's how you are. Let me give you an analogy. If that's you, you can drive all the way across the United States at night with your headlights seeing 60 feet in front of you. You can make it. Others have done it before you. You may have some obstacles, but it can be done. It's the same way with this business, the mobile home park business, multifamily, any asset class of commercial real estate. It can be done. You could have obstacles, but you got to take that first step, because a lot of people fear failure. And I'm going to tell you, if that's you, fear regret. Don't fear freaking failure. Okay. We fail our way to success. I mean, I had I call them seminars. That was a $50 million seminar. It was an expensive freaking seminar, but we all have them, and we fail our way to success. Right. And so don't fear failure, fear regret. There was this nurse in Australia, a hospice nurse, Derek, and she asked her patients who were dying a question. And she asked them, do you have any regrets? And she wrote a bestseller, something like The 5 Regrets of Dying or something like that. But the number one regret was not living. Her name was Bronnie Ware, if you want to look at the book. But the number one regret was not living the life I could have living someone else's life, not knowing what I know, doing what I know I'm capable of. Fear that. Don't fear freaking failure, right? Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, I could keep going here, but I don't want to monopolize conversation. I'm notorious for that.
No, you're good. This is the show where you're the guest. So
all right. Well, let me say the next thing cool. Then. Let's talk about fear and limiting beliefs. Okay. So what is fear? F everything and run. That's what a lot of people think it is. I like to think it's false evidence appearing real, because most people fear the emotion of fear rather than what's causing it. But, I think the best acronym is face everything and rise, because everybody has fear. The most successful people on the planet have fear. They just push through in spite of it. Us entrepreneurs call it stress, but it's fear. And you just got to push through it. Action mitigates fear. Gratitude mitigates fear. But whenever I'm fearful, I just take massive freaking action. The other piece is limiting beliefs. When I immigrated to this country, I didn't speak English, and I got thrown into school and discovered what bullies were for the first time. I was 6 years old and got my ass kicked a few times. And then my mom thought it'd be a great idea to send me to school in wooden shoes for show and tell and those leather shorts the Germans wear for Oktoberfest. So I got my ass beat again because that was like crack cocaine for the bullies. And then the bullies had chased me home, and she chased them off with a fly swatter. So next day, ass beaten. And I came up with this belief system that I wasn't good enough. It's like I used to ask myself, how can I show them I'm good enough? Because it just didn't, I didn't believe I was. And a lot of people have these limiting beliefs. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I don't have enough time. I'm not old enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not analytical enough. That was another one of mine. Here's the thing. There's a reason the acronym for belief systems is BS, because 99% of them are BS, but we believe they're real and they impact our entire lives. So if you're consciously aware of one, sometimes people aren't consciously aware, but if you know you've got one of these, when it pops up, consciously drag it into the daylight, look at it with your adult rational mind, recognize that it's BS, and it will dissipate. It took me a while. I used to be afraid to raise my hand in front of 10 kids in a classroom, and now I speak in front of thousands and thousands of people a year, typically in flip-flops, okay? So you can do it, but you got to consciously look at it and recognize that it's BS. That's how you get rid of it. The next thing I'd like to talk about is focus. The most successful people on the planet have the highest degree of focus. And so I listen to, I get excited. My podcast has, I think, exceeded 30 million downloads, which for my little space in the world like yours is not bad. But I listen to two podcasts, Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss, and they probably get 30 million a week. Did I say 30,000? 30 million is where I'm at. But they probably get that a week on their shows. And I try to keep both sides of the aisle. I'm definitely on one side, and it's not this shirt color, I can tell you that. But I'm wearing a blue shirt, by the way, just for those of you who want to get a laugh. But I try to stay balanced. So I also listen to Tim Ferriss's show. And on Tim Ferriss's show, he interviews the best of the best in the world. And they're fascinating conversations. Athletes like Michael Phelps, the swimmer, NFL, NBA players, billionaires like Ray Dalio, heads of the biggest companies in the world like Zuckerberg, actors like Ed Norton, Hugh Jackman, Arnold. And he deconstructs their success. It's fascinating conversation, how they became successful. And I started to hear a pattern, Derek. They almost all meditate. And what does meditation enhance? Focus, right? And I don't know about you, but I'll be sitting watching Netflix and scrolling through my freaking phone on social media, which kills your focus. And here's the other piece. What you focus on gets larger, both positive or negative. I get people call me and say, how do I get out of student loan debt? I'm like, wrong question. How do you make so much money that debt's irrelevant is the question you want to be asking. Yeah. And, they had, like another example is they asked Mother Teresa if she was anti-war. She said, no, I'm pro-peace. You get what I'm saying. And so it's so important that you focus on what you want, not what you don't want, which is why the goals are so freaking important. And then, probably the second to the last piece would be playing to your strengths. In our business, there's so many different hats you can wear because it's a team sport. You can be the one that finds the deals. You can be the one that underwrites the deals if you're analytical. You could be the one that talks to investors and raises money like you do, Derek. You could be sometimes you wear multiple hats. You could be the asset manager. Maybe you've got construction experience or project management experience. And there's just so many different, you could be boots on the ground, whatever it is. But here's the key, play to your freaking strengths. Don't try to build your weaknesses. Yeah, a little bit maybe, but your strengths are your greatest assets. Why? Because when you're playing to your strengths, you're happy. You're in the zone. You're enjoying yourself. Work is, you never work another day in your life because you're in the zone. You're loving what you do, right? And you're passionate. When you're playing to your strengths, you have passion, and passion's required to influence people, right? And so, again, play to your strengths, hire, align, or partner for your weaknesses. And some of the best partnerships I see in our business, Derek, and I don't know if you see this as well, is an analytical person with an outgoing person. They really cover the bases. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. My main partner in Victory Capital is the like polar opposite of me. He doesn't want to do podcasts. He doesn't want to be on podcasts. Right. He wants to implement my wild ideas, you know.
You put him in a room with a spreadsheet and throw raw meat in once in a while, and he's happy as hell, right?
Or like if we have a problem with a system, he's going to obsess about building the process for it.
Love it.
And like,
love it. Yeah, that's a match made in heaven, man. And so again, play to your strengths. And then the last, and again, when you're playing to your strengths, you know, you're more innovative, you're more creative because that passion builds that. And the last piece is who you hang out with is who you become, your peer group. Okay. And so many people default to a peer group that they went to school with or that they work with. And those people may have their own limiting beliefs and their own fears, and they'll hold you back because they're afraid of feeling less than if you succeed, or they're afraid of losing you, or, you know, whatever. And sometimes it's family. I'm going to tell you, love your family, but proactively choose who you allow to influence you, which is why, you know, getting in a group like my Warrior program is so effective. So forget that. Go to your local meetup groups. Go to Real Estate Investor Associate meetings. Get around people that want more out of life. That's who you want to be hanging around with, okay? Because, like I said, a rising tide lifts all ships, and it's just super important that you pay very close attention to who you have in your life. Because I'll tell you, show me your 3 best friends, I'll show you who you are in every aspect of your life, your health, your happiness, definitely your finances. Okay, so choose carefully. Be my point. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox here. But
yeah, look, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I had to, like, you know, even now I'm still trying to level up my friends. And I was thinking about this the other day, Rod, and I had a cognition about it. And I was like, man, the people I hang out with now, like, it's not necessarily I hang out with, but I associate with. They're business owners, they're entrepreneurs, they're wanting more, they're doing more. And so it's like when I have a conversation with someone that's not on that level, it's just not trying to be an asshole about it or anything, but it's just a different conversation.
It doesn't forward you. It doesn't forward you.
Yeah,
it just doesn't. I mean, you can still
they're
love
like
them.
living. They're like living for the week. You know,
Yeah.
we're looking,
You can
5 to 10 years in the future.
Again, you can love them, but just don't allow them to influence you. Don't allow them to influence what you're doing is the key piece there. And but yeah, I mean, you know, there's so much opportunity right now in our business, man. The multifamily is having a meltdown because these operators bought properties in 22. They way overpaid, and I'm confessed that I did one as well. And I teach this stuff, and there's a lot of deals in trouble that got bridge debt, you know, adjustable rate debt, and there's that debt wall that we're facing. I think it's like $1 trillion. You know, I just did a post this morning about office delinquencies. Office, of course, don't buy office, but I'm just using it as an example. Office delinquencies are at 12% right now. It's the highest it's ever been, ever. Okay, and I think it's much worse than that. You know, delinquencies in San Francisco are like 37% delinquent.
Wow. Phoenix,
Austin, Texas, Atlanta are all around 28, 29% vacant. And these assets don't break even unless they're, you know, 80+% occupied. And, you know, even in the multifamily world, the catchphrase for lenders is extend and pretend. They're doing deferrals, they're doing loan mods because they don't want these properties to hit their balance sheets. But that proverbial shit is going to hit the fan here pretty soon. And I'm telling you, we're seeing some deals already. There's an asset next to a apartment complex we have in San Antonio. We have a 200 unit on a lake, and there's one right next door that sold for $43 million in 22. They're down to 28 now, and it doesn't even make sense until it goes down to 24 for us. I mean, that's what's happening right now. So if there was ever a time to get into this business, it is right now. I mean, certainly you can invest passively with Derek. If you want to do it actively, get your butt to one of my boot camps. I do virtual ones every couple of months, and I don't sell anything. It's like 16 hours. I just did one last weekend. I'm still kind of recovering, actually. I had 800 people register for that, and we just go 2 days training. But if you're interested, go to that Rod's links or text the word links to 72345, and that boot camp site is there. And if it's more than 47, let me know. DM me, because all my social media is there, and let me know you heard me on Derek's show, and I'll make sure you get that price. So, but yeah, it's exciting times, Derek. I don't know what the impact has been in mobile home parks as it relates to interest rates and things like that. I think it's pretty immune from that, isn't it? For the most part.
Yeah, I mean, to a degree. I mean, because it's just kind of the lowest end of affordable housing. It kind of skates below some of this macro stuff to a degree.
Right.
But you know, I think
there are a lot of deals in trouble, man, in commercial real estate right now. Tons of them. I mean, but I like I said, I didn't think mobile home parks would be as impacted. But But my world, multifamily, massively impacted. Now I'm very big on senior housing now. I just bought my first assisted living facility 60 days ago. I mean, 10,000 people a day turning 65 right now. And I mean, that's like a tidal wave. They call it the silver tsunami. So I'm very excited about that asset class as well. And I've got a bunch of my students have senior housing facilities already.
Yeah.
Very exciting too.
When do you think all this apartment debt is like the shit is really going to hit the fan? Because
I think over the next 12 months. I think over the next 12 months. I mean, you saw they dropped the interest rate a little bit. It was like micro little drops that don't help anybody really, because Powell and Trump, I think, pretty much hate each other. Trump regrets appointing him, but the rest of the world has dropped the rates significantly, and we haven't. And so it's kind of ridiculous, candidly, but. I even think a significant drop wouldn't help a lot of these operators right now, because this debt is due. In commercial real estate, guys, that you don't get a 30-year term. You get that amortization, but you have a balloon typically in 5, 7, 10 years, and that wall of debt coming due is hitting right now, and it's significant. It's like $1 trillion. I know it's 500 billion last time I checked a year ago just for multifamily. And whoever has that happen, they either have to sell or they have to refinance. Well, sales are down 90% right now, and refinancing is extremely difficult because you have to meet debt service coverage requirements. The property's ability to service the debt, and at the rates where they're at now, they can't do it. And so there's just a lot of distress. A lot of deals are being sold for debt plus fees right now, and lenders are still holding firm on some of these, but lenders are starting to take haircuts. They have to, and I think we're going to see some real carnage. And God help us, frankly, if the Supreme Court doesn't reverse that appellate decision on Trump's ability to do tariffs. I think this country's headed for some serious economic upset if the Supreme Court doesn't reverse that, and they're leaning towards not doing it. They just had oral arguments yesterday. It did not look good. I'll tell you, if
what
they
is that
take
for
that
him to not like he wouldn't be able to put tariffs on it?
No. And that's his leverage. I mean, it's not so much about the tariffs. That's his leverage to get these people to come to the freaking negotiating table. And man, they take that away. It's just, oh man, don't get me started on how stupid that is. I think that's our only saving grace to get out of the whatever it is, $38 trillion in debt that this country has, which is it's unsustainable debt. And so if they take that away from him, I mean, sorry to go political right out of the gate here, which is not what I do, but I mean, I really think we're going to have some problems. I mean, some serious problems, because I don't see any other solutions out of this mess other than those tariffs to generate revenue and eliminate debt and being able to, hold our trading partners accountable. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be very interesting over the next 30 days. I don't know when this episode airs. It'll probably have been decided by then, but it's going to be very, very scary, candidly, if they don't reverse that appellate decision.
Yeah.
Unless he comes up with some other ability to utilize tariffs, as part of his negotiation. So we'll see.
So how do you so when you're looking at a deal, Rod, like what are you looking for? Like what traits does this deal have that's like, hey, this is a great deal for Rod?
Well, obviously returns. I mean, investors want good returns, and like mobile home parks, this senior housing has fantastic returns. I mean, this one we just bought is like staggering what it looks like and being very conservative. So I'm really loving that. I don't think multifamily is back there yet to have, the kind of returns that we need. Like I said, that property next to ours in San Antonio sold for 43. We're not interested unless it gets down to 24. So, you can see, the disparity there. But I shy away from C-class assets, which of course is, your world, just because that demographic is really getting killed by inflation. I mean, when I became single about 3 years ago, and this was 3 years ago, I go to the grocery store because I didn't have to buy groceries. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? $150 for that? And the clerk just shook her head. And I mean, I don't know how people afford to live right now. Now they've increased wages. I mean, we're seeing our expense ratios go up. I'm sure you are as well with maintenance help and all that stuff. But I got to tell you, that C-class demographics getting their asses handed to them. They living paycheck to paycheck. And again, you're more in tune with that than I am, but I stay away from C-class right now. I'm kind of doing a flight to quality. If I buy a C-class asset, I want it to be in a B area that I can raise up a notch, or be in an A area.
Yeah.
So that's a piece, that's a component, a little more of a flight to quality as it relates to multifamily. And again, I'm very interested in senior housing. That there's such a huge shortage of beds, and to build a new one's like $250,000 a bed, and we're buying them for under $100,000 a bed. And so,
Oh, wow.
it's just an incredible opportunity right now. A lot of deals went south because of COVID. So, a lot of assets in the senior housing space went south because of COVID, sadly. But yeah, so I look for returns. I look for obviously location. I'm all about the area, but I am doing a bit of a flight to quality as it relates to my analysis of multifamily.
Yeah, and that's what what you said is kind of what we do. We buy C and D assets in A areas, Tampa, Orlando. So that's where we buy mobile home parks, like in these big urban areas, because our rents are so far behind multifamily that we're in good shape.
No, I agree. I love the asset class. I absolutely love it. I told you I've got, my brother owns a bunch of parks. I told you about my friend and other notables in the industry that I'm pretty connected to. So I actually, back in the day, I had 6 virtual assistants geocoding mobile home parks around the country with Google Earth. Flying around, because a lot of them are misclassified in the county records, flying around looking for them literally visibly by flying around and geocoding them, finding the ownership, breaking down the ownership. And I was putting together a mailing campaign. They literally did it for a year, and I ended up not using it because I got into multifamily instead. But I was very hot on getting into that asset class. I believe in it very much. A great asset class.
Yeah. So what, other than the senior housing, what else are you working on now?
That's pretty much, well, I've got my coaching program, which takes a lot of my time. I've got about 2,000 students around the country. It's very exciting. It just, like I say, it's kind of gotten a life of its own. It's very supportive. I just love what I'm seeing there, and the results are just staggering. And our program's literally a fraction of what anybody else charges. It's, again, a no-brainer. If you're interested in doing this as an operator, you should definitely check it out. You can text CRUSH to 72345. That's or you can go to Rod's links or text links to 72345, and there's a link there too. But I'm doing my coaching business. I do these boot camps virtual. I was going to do a live one in LA, and last time we did it, we should have been at about 250 ticket sales. We were at 18. So I'm like, you know what? Cancel, not doing it. So just stick with virtual. When COVID hit, I had to go virtual. So I built a studio in my compound, and hell, it costs a fraction of what a live event costs. Now, we don't have the networking, unfortunately. So we're thinking about how we can facilitate that, maybe with some Zoom breakouts or something. But that's why we get our warriors together, like we did in Phoenix a couple of weeks ago. I had a few hundred of my students there, and just to really more to network than anything else. And we do deep dives on underwriting and stuff like that. But the whole purpose was to network them together. But yeah, so I do my boot camps. I got my warrior program, and I'm buying senior housing and actively looking for, waiting for the multifamily deals to hit rock bottom. And we're not there yet. But we're headed there. And like I said, I think if there was ever a time to get into commercial real estate, it is right freaking now. The opportunities are just extraordinary. Very excited about it. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, and 5 years ago, I look at the prices of deals that I saw, the ones I thought were crazy expensive, and I look back now and I'm like, oh my God, I should have just bought them all. Like, will we be saying that again in 5 years? For the
we definitely will. So that's a beautiful thing. The inflation sucks for a lot of people, but for us, it doesn't, because inflation also impacts rents, and our valuations are based on a multiple of the net income. And so any increase that the rents increases the net income. It's a beautiful thing. Now, I'll get hate. Somebody will hate me for that comment, but this is the way it works. If you're in this business, if you can lock in your debt, your rents are going to go up. They've historically gone up forever. And so it's the same thing's going to happen. We're going to see much higher rents in 4 or 5 years. We're going to see much higher valuations. Yeah. One other thing I'd like to mention, just because I always like to mention it, just because I think it adds value to your peeps here, if you humor me. So, when I immigrated, I ended up in Denver, Colorado, but I knew I always wanted to live on the beach, and now I live on both sides of Florida. I go to the beach here in Miami. I live in a beautiful compound on the water in Sarasota. But back then I knew I wanted to live on the beach, and so 20 years later, I built this incredible mansion on the beach, like 10,000 square foot. I owned the beach on one side. I had my boats on the back side. It was unthinkable when I was 18. And that's the importance of goals, guys. And so, I made it happen. And I worked for that house for 20 years, this mansion. And about 2 months after I moved in, and by the way, to describe this, there was a big waterfall from the second floor balcony into the pool. You had to walk through the waterfall to get to the pool. Pools and magazines, big spiral staircase up through the middle of the house, wine cellar, elevator. On the second floor, around the staircase, I had aquariums built that cost me almost $200,000. So that gives you an idea of the house. Wow. Anyway, so 2 months after I moved in, I'm floating in the pool at night, and I'm looking up at this testament to my ego, because this was to prove to the freaking world I was good enough. Okay. I mean, if that didn't do it, forget it. I may as well give it up, and I got depressed, and I don't mean a little depressed. I mean, I had a beautiful family sleeping inside the house. I had all the toys, the boats, the jet skis, the Maserati, Mercedes, you name it, all the stuff I thought was important. And I got depressed. And I don't mean a little depressed. I mean, I got really depressed. This was 2 months after I moved in. And when I look back on it, and that's the message I like to share, Derek, when I look back on it, there were three things that were happening. One was, you should never achieve a big goal without having other goals lined up behind it. Like the good book says, without a vision, the people perish. You need a vision for the future. And I didn't know what I was going to do next. So that was number one. Number two is, it's never about the goals. You need them to create that burning desire and hunger to go kick ass and push through fear and limiting beliefs. But, they say the happiest days of a boat owner's life, the day they buy the boat and the day they sell the boat, right? And it's the same thing with your goals. And I mean, I was 2 months in, I was already depressed after building this thing I worked for 20 years, because happiness comes from progress and growth, not from achieving the goals. You've got to be progressing and growing. And I didn't know how I was going to progress or grow beyond that. And by the way, if you do my goal setting workshop at Rod's Links, at the end of that, I do a weekly planning process, like 15 minutes of weekly planning process that'll blow your mind. It's super, it's a fantastic way to execute. And it's how I manage 2 large companies at the same time. And one of the pieces of that weekly planning process is to acknowledge anything you got done. Because again, happiness comes from progress, but you've got to acknowledge it consciously. So very important piece there. But the third thing, the big thing, was I was totally focused on me. Rod, show the world I matter, blah, 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 blah. And that's the year when I was depressed. I sought out, people to help me with that. I got some books, and one of them was Tony Robbins' book. And I went and saw him live. And I spent 23 years following him around the planet. Guys, if you have an opportunity to see him speak, just do it. Trust me, you'll thank me. But I saw that he fed families for the holidays. I'm like, what a concept. Do something for someone else. I'm embarrassed to say I had to be 40 to get that memo. Now, don't tune out when I say what I'm going to say next, because it's not me bragging. There's a real message in this, okay? So over the last 25 years, I've fed over 150,000 children in my area in Sarasota for the holidays, children that wouldn't have a holiday meal. We did holiday meals, and the reason that I did that was I called my brother in Denver and said, let's feed 5 families. Third family changed my life. When I was visiting for Thanksgiving, this woman came out, saw the food, started crying. Her kids came out, they started crying, I started crying, and I was hooked. And so fed 150,000 kids in my area. I've done tens of thousands of backpacks filled with school supplies. We did 2,000 a couple of months ago. Don't get me started on that. Greatest country on earth, that we can't give our kids school supplies. But and then I've done thousands and thousands of teddy bears to local police departments for officers to keep in their vehicles if they encounter a child that's been in a traumatic situation. Now, the reason I bring this up, Tony Robbins calls it the science of achievement versus the art of fulfillment. Achievement's a science. If you want to be an operator and buy commercial real estate, get your butt to my boot camp. I'll give you the map and the blueprint. You just got to go do it. But fulfillment is an art. You got to figure out what juices you. For me, it's children. It's also the elderly. Maybe for you, it's animals. Maybe it's the environment. Give back right now. And I don't say, well, he had money, that's why he gave back. No, you want the money? Give back. That's how you get the money. That's how it happens. That's how God works. Power moves to those who serve. Whatever you give, you get. So give back right away. And and you'll thank me, because instead of achieving to be happy, we've been taught in this country that we have to achieve to be happy. You'll be happily achieving because you're fulfilled. I just want to
Yeah.
share that before we
Yeah,
lose.
no, and I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, it's like you see that's such an interesting story that you said, because I think that, you know, production is the basis of morale. When you're
Right.
producing and doing things right, your morality goes up. And if you don't have those targets anymore, like, you're done. Like, you're done. You
Yeah.
might as well pack it up, and you're going to
No.
be totally
I've
unhappy.
interviewed people in my studio in Florida that fly in from all over the country that are super successful, like 10,000 units, 5,000 units. And I can tell if they're like I was before I had that epiphany. And I feel sad for them, honestly, because they're not truly successful because they're not fulfilled. Yeah, they may have money and they may have the toys and the stupid shit we all think is important at one time in our lives, but they're not fulfilled. And so, yeah, take that to heart, guys, because it really changes everything when you're giving back in some fashion.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll tell you from personal experience. I mean, there's causes that my wife and we contribute to, and every time that we contribute a large amount, we always
It always comes back.
It always
Yeah.
opens up a flow.
Yeah, that's how it works, man. That's how it works. It's incredible. I remember one time, I used to pay for all those baskets of food myself, and I was feeding 1,500 families. It was about 50 grand. And my brother, who was working with me at the time, said, "We don't have the money." I said, "I don't care. We find the money, because we're going to do it anyway." And of course, it came back tenfold once we did.
Yeah.
And you don't do it for that reason, but that's just the way it works. So
yeah, totally. So last question here before we end out. Like, you've helped a ton of people, and I think it's just absolutely, like, it's awesome.
Oh, thank you.
What do you ever think about legacy, and like what people think about you and remember about you?
That's my friggin' legacy, man. I get love every single day. And I don't, again, try not to brag here, but I get emails, I get DMs, I get gifts, I get postcards every single day. Now I get hate too, because I get these entitled little nymphs in their mom's basements. No one should own 800 houses. I'm like, okay, whatever. But no, I get love every single day. And it's such a freaking blessing. I've had the Lamborghinis and the Rolls Royce and the Bentley, all this stupid crap I thought was important. No, I truly, what juices me now is seeing the success of, and people are going to think that that's BS, but it's not. That's what juices me. I've had all the other stuff. Just it doesn't juice me anymore. What juices me is to see other people kill it, and they're doing it. And I just love it, man. I absolutely love it. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's funny that my business partner and I were talking about this, because, we're doing this fund right now, and it's like, it gets a little crazy.
Sure.
The keyboard warrior in their mom's basement, they're like they have no idea the stress and the risk. And if you told them, hey, you have to put all your money on the line to do this, like, they'd be, oh yeah, no, I can't do that. Like, the stuff that we go through on a daily basis.
It's so sad because there's so many of them. Literally, I get hate every day. I get hate every day from people who, that's why Mandami got elected. People want everything given to them, and they don't realize that just doesn't work. It's a recipe for disaster. So we'll again, sorry to go political again, but that's, it's going to be interesting to see that what happens in New York. But anyway, I've enjoyed this, brother. I appreciate you having me on. Of course, if I can help you with anything, don't hesitate to reach out. If you're interested in checking me out, go to rodspodcast.com. I think you'll really appreciate it. My podcast link is also at my link tree. Text links to 72345. And I'd love to, and I answer every question, by the way, on my social media. So if you ever have a question, just ping me. It gives me pleasure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, Rod, for coming on the show. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the MHP Show podcast. We will see you all next week. Peace.